Hi, my name is Blake Spears. As a solo developer, I've been working on Mira's Brush for the last 5 years. Mira's Brush is a puzzle platformer playing around with a lot of mechanics. Mira's Brush began with music, and I have always loved chiptune music, both 8-bit and 16-bit, going all the way back to the Commodore 64. So I'm going to show you how BeepBox, a free tool available online, can allow you to create easy, fun music for your game development. So we're going to go to beepbox.co. I'll be using the timestamps below to guide you through this video. So if there's something you don't want to see right now, you can skip ahead to the thing you do want to see. First, we'll be setting up some basic preferences. Second, I'll be showing you some tips and tricks on creating unique sounds in BeepBox. Third, I'll be showing you the basic setup for a 8-bit chiptune. Fourth, I'll be showing you some basic structure to a chiptune. So to start off with, we're going to talk about our preferences. And again, you can skip this if you already get the gist. We have the basic BeepBox setup here with a variety of bars. You can see that I can drag and click, and you can't really tell what's going on. There isn't much feedback. So we're going to go into our preferences, and we're going to set up a few basic preferences that should help with that. First, we're going to preview the added notes that allow us to listen to what we just clicked on. Next, we're going to turn on our piano keys. That's if you know a little bit of the notes, it can help you here. You know where your C is, you know where your E is, and if you know all good boys deserve fudge, you know the basics of music, this kind of thing can help. We're also going to highlight fifth notes, because fifth notes can help create some nice little harmonies. Again, if you know music quite well, you might find that too basic, but I find it does help me figure out where to begin and end a sequence. We're going to turn on our octave scroll bar. Our octave scroll bar allows us to change our octave, which is basically the set of notes we can see at one time. And there's a few other preferences we can choose if you like. These are the ones I like to choose. Now you can see I've got a fairly limited set of notes because the scale is set to easy. Easy is not bad, and it's how I got into learning how to put tunes together in a simple manner, but there are a few other presets. Obviously, you can go into expert where you have access to all the notes and all the in-between notes that would be on a regular piano, or you can go into different presets. I prefer to start off with a normal. The smiley face in each one of these is going to be a major key, and the frowny face is a minor key. Now, if you don't know much about music like I didn't, I can tell you at least that a major key tune tends to sound a little bit more cheery. And a minor key tune tends to sound a little bit more sad, dismal, or scary. You have, though, not just one preset to play with. You have things like Island preset, which gives it a little bit more of a mysterious vibe just because of the notes that they've cut out. You also have blues, which gives you a few of the notes that are common to blues signatures. You have double harmonic, which is good for using the pentatonic scale, or anything that's got kind of like a eerie, mystical, mythic vibe often will come on with a double harmonic scale. You also have strange, which just gets rid of some of the more common notes, and of course we've already been through expert. These are not the only presets available in some of the other variants of BeepBox, something like Jumbox, which gives you a few more options. This gives you some real basic guideposts to create easy, simple tunes that are fun to listen to. Again, if you don't have a lot of musical training, I suggest using these presets because they can save you some time and effort. Every time you click a bar on BeepBox, you place a note, and you can click on that note and drag it to change the length of that note. BeepBox is smart enough to know that I'm going to stick on 4. I can then drag a note out and change its length, and then again, BeepBox is going to work out exactly what I want to do for the next couple notes. Also, instead of just dragging it, we can pitch shift. We click on either the front or back of the note, we hold the mouse down, and we drag down or up, and this is going to create a pitch shift. So we can either drift all the way down like these notes are, or drift all the way up like these notes are going to do, or even create a little twang by just drifting just the corner of the note just a little bit there. So I can show you. Let's make this double. There we go, and we'll take a listen. Now let's say I want to fade in or fade out a note. I can click and hold above the note and drag one way or the other to change where it fades in or fades out for that particular note. So I can make a note that starts off quiet and in the middle goes up and in the end goes wide again like this. At the very bottom here, you're going to see that I've got 4 different instruments selected. Each one of these lines is a different instrument, or each block is its own instrument, and each instrument can have multiple patterns. So for example, in this case, I can hit C to copy this pattern, and I can paste it in with V, and then I can press the plus button, make it go up a little bit, or the minus button to go down a little bit, and now I've got 2 different patterns going back and forth. So I can press the 2 button here in this spot to switch that pattern to number 2, and now it's going to oscillate between pattern 1 and pattern 2. I could add a pitch shift into one of these. The patterns can have any number of variations I want. And then the patterns can repeat as many times as I want, or as infrequently as I want. Each one of these patterns is for a different instrument, so I could copy the same pattern and put it into the second line, and BeepBox has selected a random instrument for me, so it's going to sound a little different when we blend them together. So let's blend these 2 instruments together, and you'll see that they create you can see that I can have 3 instruments there, and the last instrument is actually the drums. Now, we've been talking about how to pitch shift, we've been talking about how to fade out, and drums by default fade out on the hit. So I can just click in any spot here, and each one, it creates a drum note at a different pitch. I can do the same effects if I want. If I want to have it fade in rather than fade out, I can reverse it by the click and drag method. I can also extend or shorten that drum to anywhere within my rhythm. So I could, in this case, since I've got 4 spots, I can do a maximum of 4 drum hits per block. And I can change that at any point. When I create a little block like this, it creates a nice little short sound. If I want to create more of a big hit, I can extend that out and even make the block full size, so it's like a real big solid boom. Again, the drum fades out like a normal drum would, so when you extend it like this, it sounds a little bit less natural. So I have created a new blank song, and as you can see, BeepBox defaults to selecting a new random instrument. Now, I have, as I've said, 4 different instruments, and each one can have different patterns. By default, the lowest pattern is the lowest on the octave scale, but you can adjust that at any time. It's just by default. You can see that it slowly goes up as you go higher up the notes, and of course you can change the instruments at a whim just by going into the settings and increasing or decreasing the number of instruments. You can increase the drum channels, you can increase the number of patterns per channel. I tend to choose just an arbitrary number so that I have more than 8 patterns because I find that I go through those rather quickly. I also tend to choose a higher number of pitch channels and a higher number of drum channels, so I have a little bit more flexibility. I can choose the number of instruments per channel, which allows me to double up the number of instruments for a single block, but that's not necessary at this time. Now we're going to play around with a few basic effects we just went through by creating a nice simple rhythm towards the bottom of my octave range, and then we're going to play around with a few other effects and just see how that sounds to give a demonstration of the absolute basics. So let's start off by choosing a nice instrument for a bass line. In this case, we're going to go through the instrument list. I can choose B, press the B button to go down to bass, and you can see I've got a slap bass down there so I can slap the bass. And I'm going to try and put down just a nice simple bass line, a repeating bass down here using some of the effects we talked about. Now, when I was just starting out, and still today, I would often not choose exactly the mood or the type of song I wanted to make until I played around with a few notes, even put down a few notes randomly. This helped me practice my skills, and then later I could decide, oh, this song would be nice in this type of level. I'm going to copy that and put number 2 in this spot so I can paste it in. I'll use my minus button so we get a repeating rhythm of 2 different levels. Okay, I got my repeating bass line in there. Now we're going to add a melody at the top. And now this is where we're going to play around with one of the other features of BeepBox, the ability to create simple chords. Now, there are many different ways to create simple chords. I'm just going to put 2 notes together, and it's going to play them at the same time. Now, this particular note instrument doesn't sound great using these. I can choose a different instrument that has a little bit of a more logical choice in here. Let's just choose a simple jazz guitar. Alright, I've got a nice simple rhythm happening here, and I've got some nice basic chords. I can make those more complex by adding more notes or doing all kinds of things like that. But let's say we want to go for a classic 8-bit sound. And I'm going to go to something like a square wave. By default, square waves do not have chords. Instead, they oscillate using something called an arpeggio. And that's just how classic old school notes were. They weren't able to create a harmony. So in this case, when I click on square wave, you're going to hear that there's a little bit of distortion going on when you get a chord. Now I can customize it, so I'm able to go from arpeggios to harmonies. Or I can add different effects such as reverberation. So you've seen how some of the basic effects work in BeepBox. Now let's play around specifically with creating an 8-bit chiptune, knowing what we know about arpeggios, about how to shrink and grow notes, how to make things smaller, how to fade things out, how to pitch shift, and how to use all 4 to 6 of my instrument spaces. We're also going to play around with some chipped drums and see how that sounds out. So let's cut to now. I'll create a basic rhythm as quick as I can. I've got a variety of instruments at my disposal, but let's say I want to limit myself to create an authentic sounding 8-bit chiptune. Well, there's some 8-bit instruments built into BeepBox: chip waves, pulse waves, harmonics, spectrum noises, square waves, triangle waves, square leads, and so on. When I work, I tend to choose with square waves. Square waves tend to sound very authentic, and they have a lot of variants I can easily edit. But again, there's no rule saying you have to use one instrument or another. However, if I choose the square wave, and as soon as I do to customize it, it changes to a chip wave, and I can make small edits to that instrument. I like to make all my instrument in the square wave family, and I like to put the drum beats in using my chip noise drum set. The chip noise drum set is a little harsh sounding. Now that we have a basic chiptune beat in there, we can again play around with creating a bass line. Now, when I do a bass line in chip sound, I tend to like a slightly harsher sound you can hear. Alright, now I have a basic, nice repeating rhythm in here. I can then go back up and add a little upper harmony, again using the chip sound. There, I like to use a delayed vibrato, but there's a lot of different options. And you're going to see it sounds a little bit more of that classic Nintendo sound. So we're talking about the basic structure of a chiptune. Now, a classic 8-bit chiptune has a fairly recognizable structure, and I like to play around with that. Again, you can do pretty much anything you want, and I've definitely found some great results by being more outside of the structure than I expected, but we're going to start off with a real basic structure. A lot of solid chiptunes have a nice, crunchy bass line, some nice, solid drums, and then a few different interplaying rhythms. And what I find is if I repeat a few times and then break that up with a new variation or breakdown, it tends to create a nice tune. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to create a little bit of a harmony here. Now again, it isn't possible to do harmonies using a standard chiptune, but it is possible to have a second instrument playing at a slightly different, using a different wave and have those mixed together. So I'm going to just press the C button on my selection of 4 different patterns there, and I'm going to paste them in here, and it will create 4 different patterns in this other instrument. Gonna add a bit more variation. And again, it can keep going on like this. I could create a song that was literally just this repetitious sound, and it would be all right. It might be real basic for like a menu screen or something like that, but I find it a little bit too repetitious right off the bat. So I'm going to add a few more instruments by going into my channel settings, and let's go up to 6 instruments, which is the maximum for BeepBox. I love having some restrictions in there, but you can use other variants like Jumbox if you want a few more instruments. I'm also going to create 2 drum channels. I may not use the second channel. There's a maximum of 3, but it's nice to be there in case I want to vary that. I'm going to create 42 separate patterns. Again, that's arbitrary. I just happen to like the number 42, but 8 patterns for me isn't enough once I get into the song a bit more. I can also extend the length of the song out as far as I like. I'm again going to choose 42. Even though it's arbitrary, I do find that the song tends to loop really well once it gets to the end of that 40-second bar, but sometimes I need to extend it out a little bit longer for something more epic, or shorten it if it's just a nice little fun tune. I also can change the number of beats in the bar. It's standard of 8 beats, but I could change it out to any number I want, really. I could have a huge number or a very small number of beats. And I have a variety of other options here that I can play around with. So now we're going to change the song up a bit in the next bar. So, alright, I've just decided to go into this. I've decided to use a sawtooth variant, and I'm going to change this from seamless to hard so you can hear the separation between notes. And we're going to make the second section lead in with a sawtooth. So I can use my bracket buttons to go back and forth. And let's go back to the next segment of the song. Again, I don't know what I'm doing here, just playing around until I hear something that I like. And let's adjust the volume of this so you can hear it above the end of the instruments a little bit more. We can just bring that up for the individual instrument. Again, I wanted to go even louder, so I'm going to just duplicate it. I'm not even going to vary the variation.
From this point forward, I build up the song with alternating sections, often repeating back to the original refrain and adding to or creating variants. I can copy 4 bars together and paste them in and make some play around with some variations. Sometimes I'll break it down and simplify it or create a whole new sequence, tune, or rhythm to come in there. Sometimes it'll be like a call and response where 2 different instruments play against each other, but I go back and forth between different elements. This sort of repeating pattern is actually how a lot of original chiptunes were handled programmatically. They would program the song to automatically slip in different variants as it repeated along. Sometimes I want to build a fast section that starts quickening up the rhythm. To do that, I'll take the same rhythm and double up the number of notes. So instead of 2 per beat, there might be 4. Instead of 4 per beat, there might be 8. I do the same with the drum beats, although more often I create a more regular, repetitious drum beat with harsher snares. I then play around with the notes and the beats to create transitions between each section. So by the end, you have a smooth whole that's vacillating between one speed and another, that is alternating between different patterns, and where different variants come along. I then play around with my limited musical knowledge to create interesting effects. Things like arpeggios, going up and down scales, playing around with high and low notes that sort of jar but smooth out together. All different kinds of ways of playing around, and by playing around in BeepBox, you'll find similar ways of creating your own unique variants. But again, we're starting with a basic structure of these repeating patterns and these simple but fun rhythms. When I make chiptune music, it's with the deliberate intention to use in a level in a video game, either an imaginary level that I just make up to help me with the feel, or a specific level of a game I'm developing. So I'm always trying to make looping chiptunes that don't completely dominate the soundscape, create a mood, but don't overwhelm the listener. Alright, I'm going to change a couple settings here. I'm going to change my preferences so I can display the song down in URL. That way I can copy and paste this into another window or into a Google Doc for later. I can also export it. And I can give it a title. I can download it as a WAV file, as an MP3 file. The MIDI files are not quite as clean. I find that the conversion isn't perfect, as it almost never is with MIDIs, but you can basically export it in a variety of formats. Now here's one of the most powerful features of BeepBox is you can actually hit Control-A, select the entire waveform or the entire selection. You can change it to a different scale. Let's change it to a minor scale and see how that sounds. Let's even increase the speed of it.
Okay, that could probably loop a little bit more cleanly, but I'm gonna save that by copying it to my Google Doc. Okay, let's try making a song in 16-bit. Again, we'll add a bit of reverberation. Let's play around with something a little bit different. Let's go for a little bit of a bluesy feel. And we're going to play around with some of the instruments that are built in. We're going to start off, we have a wide variety of instruments. Let's start off with one of my favorite instruments. Again, we'll go back to that slap bass, and we'll create a bit of a sort of a jazzy rhythm. All right, let's switch to a standard drum set. What would be nice? Let's play around with some violin. The key is to try and get used to each instrument and how it fits into the style of music you're going to be creating. Again, I'm always trying to create game music. That's music that is somewhat incidental but still gives you the right energy. So you can play around with 16-bit samples, 8-bit samples, anything you want to do in BeepBox. It's a great tool to use. And I hope you guys check out Mira's Brush. There are well over 100 original chiptunes in that game, and I hope that it's fun to play as well. Continue your development and playing, and I hope you love and support indie games and the great tools we have at our disposal to create unique pieces of art. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your week.